We're going to examine the STC lore to define the requirements of an STC. Here we have the original description of an STC from the book Rogue Trader, published in 1987. An STC is a computer program. Later we will find that it is an artificial intelligence that has a library of standard templates available for the user. The STC can tell the user how to build or design the standard template item. And the most interesting thing is it can tell the user how to make the item out of any available material. Is one of the requirements of an STC to be able to make or design an item out of any materials that are available. Since it was created during the dark age of technology, it must be at least 15,000 years old. The range is probably 15 to 25,000 years old. And the third item, the STC must be demonstrated to be an artificial intelligence, an advanced computer program. Now, before we proceed into looking at the lore for a hidden STC, perhaps the single most important development in the STC lore is in the book Death of Integrity. There is an STC. Here we have a description, a column of complicated machinery slightly to the right of the captain's chair. And when it finally talks to them, it talks about his captain. And he calls his captain my bondmate. Now, it's interesting to note there is no such word, but the implication and the meaning are quite clear. The captain is the STC's bondmate. And what we will find throughout the lore, that in almost all cases in which an STC is actually active and able to communicate, there is a bondmate, a human associated with the STC. Afterwards, we will examine these three books, Dark Imperium, Dark Adeptus, and the Death of Integrity. Each of these three books by themselves are almost impossible to decipher the meaning of how they contribute to the STC. But combined, they contain everything we need to know about standard template constructs. So first we will examine and find the hidden STC and the implications therein. And for this, we list the requirements that we need to find an STC. It must be 15 to 25,000 years old. It must be demonstrably an artificial intelligence or computer program. And it must be able to design or make a technological item with the materials at hand. In the book Dark Imperium, there is a short story called, appropriately enough, Ancient History, in which we meet a character named Kron. We learn that he is at least 3,800 years old, and when he is knocked out and comes to, he says a most curious thing. Where am I? He whispered on trembling lips. On the gun deck, there was a fight. He broke off. Kron had raised his hands to his metal half skull and a dim jewel eye. It's still on me. Get it off me before it can crash restart. The implications are quite clear. Kron is the STC, and when it is inactive, that personality surfaces. For the third point, to be able to make a technological item out of the materials at hand, near the end of the story, the ship that they're on is attacked by minions of chaos. Nathan, the teller of our story, is attacked by a chaos champion with a chain axe, and it shreds his arm down to his helmet and gouges out his eye. He passes out from loss of blood and shock. And when he wakes up 5 hours later, he feels rested and healthy. But even more amazingly, he has a bionic eye. As Kron tells him, don't be too thankful, lad. I had to fix your eye with what was to hand down here. He has made a bionic eye out of scratch and installed it in less than 5 hours. And more importantly, as Nathan says here, his vision is perfect. This is beyond the capabilities of the Imperium at this point in time. What he says, I had to fix your eye with what was the hand down here, is the definition of an STC. Another interesting aspect of this story, ancient history, is that Nathan calls Kron a gargoyle on 3 separate occasions in this story. What I was surprised to find when I looked up what a gargoyle is, not the statue, but the actual monster, this is from Wikipedia, is that a gargoyle is a living monster made of stone by day, and at night they shed the stone and become flesh. That is the most appropriate analogy for a stone man. We will examine Kron's tale in detail later because he tells the story of the stone man in ancient history. And given that he is a stone man, what we are actually going to hear is the history of the Imperium from the point of view of a stone man as a primary source. Before I leave, we're going to examine one story and just small pieces of it to demonstrate that what we learn can be applied to every story. Here we have Kron when he's telling Nathan that he is over 3,800 years old. What we shall see is that when an STC is active, the eyes change. And on that note, we're going to look at the story Monastery of Death, which seemingly has almost no information about the STC in the story Monastery of Death. The master's head snapped up, and Tenzin froze before his gaze like a small bird before a snake. Eyes of utter blackness seemed to drill right through his soul. His muscles tensed in reflex, and he found himself unable to move. Now, what's interesting, here we have 2 characteristics that we will see are common among the bondmate to the STC, which is the eyes change color. In this case, his eyes become black. And we will also find that the STC seems to have the ability to freeze or hold a person in stillness. The purpose of this has been to demonstrate that there is an STC within the lore, and the STC is also a stone man. In the next video, I will examine the story of Kron in detail and find the history of the stone man.